Oh man, this just keeps getting funnier. The John Klingberg saga with the Toronto Maple Leafs has been an absolute disaster so far. After signing John Klingberg to a $4.1 million deal this offseason, the Leafs have gotten screwed by it. In 13 games, he has 0 goals, 5 assists, a -8, and is now looking to potentially be healthy scratched. That's right, folks. We're not even 15 games into the John Klingberg experiment, and it's already a failure. But just how bad has this contract been for the Leafs? How bad has it handcuffed them? And what could happen next with Klingberg and the Leafs? Could we see a trade in the future? Make sure you watch till the end for all the latest news and breakdowns, and hit that subscribe button if you're new for more hockey content just like this all throughout the year. Now, John Klingberg's tenure with the Leafs was already pretty rocky, and this game cemented it versus the Ottawa Senators. A 6-3 defeat for the Leafs, and Klingberg was a -3. Now, the first goal against for John Klingberg came with the Leafs on the board, 1-0, 7 minutes into the first. The Leafs actually win the faceoff, and the puck goes behind the net. Klingberg, though, not able to handle the physical pressure, and of course, the Senators are able to cycle because of this. And because of this, it goes right back to the point, Kubalik a rip, and it's 1-1. As you'll see a lot in today's video, Klingberg just watching the puck go in. It would get much worse though, and one of the worst shifts I've ever seen from a defenseman came right at the start of the second with the game tied. To start this play out, Tim Stützle coming up, trying to break out, trying to enter the zone. Here is John Klingberg right on the left, and you can see just how easily he lets Stützle command the ice. Joseph a shot there. Good save there by Wall. But watch how lost John Klingberg is on the rest of this play. Just right in front of the slot, not doing anything, and nobody's there for the Claude Giroux talent. I mean, really, the whole team is playing horrible defensively here, but John Klingberg is just the icing on the cake. And then you have this absolutely brutal shift. The Leafs would tie the game, but that tie wouldn't last long. You see the center starting the breakout here, and it goes right ahead. Joseph is the first to the puck here. You can see Klingberg's D partner in Giordano coming in, but you also see Klingberg going right behind the net. He's stuck between 2 different Ottawa Senators, not committing to either of them, and it's 3-2. But this one is especially embarrassing. You get between 2 Ottawa Senators, but don't commit to either of them. Go to Tim Stützle. Dreger has Joseph covered, at least for now, but Klingberg decides to do neither of that, and the goal happens because of it. This next horrible defensive effort was just the cherry on top, though. 4-3, you're trying to stop the bleeding in the third period, trying to come back, but John Klingberg does not allow. The Senators get the turnover in their own defensive zone, and here you see Tim Stützle and John Klingberg on the far right. And as you can see with Stützle's form, he is a lot more ready to attack and a lot more speed already on his skates, with Klingberg kind of outside of it. And as this play forms, you can see Klingberg tries to attempt to get back to it, but as the Senators enter the zone, everything really changes for them as Giroux makes a fantastic play across. Klingberg loses his man in Tim Stützle, and he buries it to make it 5-3. But just look at this. I mean, he's not even covering Stützle right here, but he had the opportunity to. He seemed to have decent coverage, but then he completely gets a deer under the headlights, and Stützle just comes out of nowhere to make it 5-3. But really, Klingberg should have at least been protecting the net a little bit more than this, attacking somebody, being somewhat aggressive defensively. I mean, it's not the problem that he's being super aggressive and missing his men. He's just not doing anything out there. This goal as well got very heavily criticized in the game versus the Florida Panthers, as it rightfully should. You can see a scrum here right in the corner, and Klingberg, the one guy that seems to be closest to the point, at least having the most freedom to get it out. And you can see a scramble for it. Klingberg has a lot of time to make a play, but he ends up just shanking it off the boards. The Panthers come in, Stenlund, and it's 1-0 Florida. Just a lot of tiny, simple mistakes, and other teams are feasting on it. You can see on this play during the Kings game, I mean, it was a horrible game for the entire team, but his D partner, Legison, is passing the puck along the boards to Klingberg. This is a play that he should have. This is the puck that he should have. Byfield uses his body well, and as you can see, Kopitar, it's a swinging play. He comes along the left side. Klingberg should be defending Kopitar, and he attempts to. And for a decent stretch, it looks like it's okay, but he completely loses him. Byfield comes in, Kopitar gets the rebound, Kempe puts it home, and Klingberg's on for another goal against. And we could keep going. There were so many goals so far for this Leafs season that have been by Klingberg, caused by Klingberg, so many different mistakes defensively that it's just hard to reconcile. We all knew that John Klingberg was not going to be a defensive player, and that was never really his game. But even when he was at his best with the Stars, he was average. He would make some big mistakes here and there, but typically he would have average defensive results. With the Ducks, With the Leafs now, this guy is toast, and there's no other way of putting it. He turned down a mega offer by the Dallas Stars, and thank jeebies he did, because he has been brutal ever since and has really no signs of turning a page. And it's very obvious that John Klingberg is not the player he used to be, but I also think that we're kind of underrating how much the age curve has affected him. I mean, he's not a young player by any means. He's 31 years old at this stage in his career, and he's certainly showing those signs of decline. He was always a player that I was personally very hesitant to re-sign. I wanted to see him still as a Dallas Star, but I especially didn't want to see him having a major mega deal, even though there were some good signs still. But you, of course, see in his last season with Dallas, he still played pretty great, got 47 points in 74 games, but defensively was not where he needed to be. And of course, he wouldn't end up getting a contract extension with Dallas. He would sign with the Anaheim Ducks on a 1-year deal. And you can see just how brutal it was. In 50 games, he got 24 points, was one of the worst defensive players in the entire league when he did play. For Anaheim, they were relying so much on him being this revelation on the defense. And he had some decent moments, but most of the time, man, he was one of the worst defensemen in the NHL. And of course, he ended up traded to the Minnesota Wild, where he got 9 points in 17 games and was a point per game in the playoffs, but had some awful defensive moments. This one always strikes me. Rupe Hintz in that first round series, putting Klingberg in a blender to score unreal goal. And then you go on to Toronto, where of course he has 0 goals, 5 assists in 13 games, and has been one of the worst defensive players in the entire NHL. And there was hope, I think, slight hope that he could get back to at least some decent game on the power play, get some decent point totals, but that hope has been evaporated so far. I mean, the fact that he isn't even at half a point per game, you need Klingberg to be at a half a point per game to be valuable. This is not a player that's going to be bringing his value defensively, and not only has that offense been disappointing, but that defense, of course, has been worse than expected. That's the biggest thing, though, is with Klingberg, there was some hope that, you know, the defensive play probably wouldn't be there, but the offense could at least serve to replace it a little bit, could serve to bring some value onto that Leafs power play, but it has been brutal. He has not been good offensively either. He has had some decent moments along the blue line. He still has a lot of talent, but you can tell he is not what he used to be in every area of the game. And it's honestly just kind of sad to watch. And I want to be making a video about him if he was at 8-10 points or deserved 8-10 points this season, because offensively, if Klingberg was doing what he needed to do, then this wouldn't be a story. This wouldn't be a problem. But the fact that offense hasn't been nearly good enough to supplement that horrible defensive play, we're seeing the negative value that Klingberg is bringing, and we'll likely see him scratched because of it. Now, when we look at this Leafs team and the 5-on-5 stats here, only 2 players on this Leafs team have a worse expected goals against per 60 minutes, and that is David Kampf and Noah Gregor. But of course, Klingberg is last among defensemen in that stat. And offensively, he's not even really lighting the world on fire. At least on 5-on-5, he's not in the greatest position. And then when you look at all NHL defensemen that have played 175 minutes of time on ice this year, you can see John Klingberg has the 3rd worst expected goals against per 60 with a 3.77 rate. Only Victor Hedman and Jan Rutta are worse. But you can see at least with Victor Hedman, he's expected a little bit more goals for per 60. With Klingberg, the offense just has not been there, and the defense is among the worst in the league. And you can see among all NHL defensemen, he's kind of in the tier of 3 San Jose Sharks here with a -8, 6th worst in the NHL right now. Not exactly where you want to be. And you can see in terms of the counting stats defensively, he's not exactly doing too much either. 5th in hits with 11. In terms of blocks, he's 5th with 15. But also, Jake McCabe has played a lot less games and could be ahead of him if he had those same amount of games. And in terms of giveaways, that's the only stat that Klingberg's high up on that Leafs defense with 11 in 13 games. Because of course he is. And now we go on to the Leafs and their defense for the next little bit, and it seems like John Klingberg will be a healthy scratch. According to Jonas Siegel of The Athletic, these were the Leafs practice lines today. You got Morgan Rielly, Brody, Giordano, McCabe, Benoit, Legeson, and you got John Klingberg there as the 7th D. And it's really embarrassing, especially considering the cap hits, with John Klingberg making $4.15 million. And then you can see Simon Benoit making $775K and William Legeson making $775K as well. About as low as you could possibly get in the NHL level. They are both ahead of Klingberg on the depth chart at this point for the Leafs. And that's kind of just sad to watch. And especially considering Klingberg has a modified no trade clause, that becomes a lot more fun. Of course he has a modified no trade clause. Trilliving, what were you thinking, man? It seems like for Klingberg, modified no trade protection is pretty important to him in contract negotiations, considering, of course, the deal he signed with Anaheim came with that, as well as that $7 million paycheck. My goodness. But you don't have to give it to him, man. Just because he wants it doesn't mean you have to give it. And what really burns is the fact that the Leafs could have had a much better offensive defenseman for much cheaper, who ended up going to the New York Rangers in the same offseason. And funnily enough, this was actually a player they acquired at the trade deadline this last year, so it could have been so much easier. And that is Erik Gustafsson, now of the New York Rangers, who is pretty much the same age, a little bit older than John Klingberg, but at 31 years old, Gustafsson has been lights out for this New York Rangers team. As you can see, in 12 games so far, has 3 goals, 5 assists for 8 points. For some reason, Sheldon Keefe did not want to play him with the Leafs last year, but he was fantastic for Washington in an offensive role last season, and for Toronto, wasn't really given the opportunity that he really needed. In New York, though, he is getting a lot more opportunity in the power play on even strength, and you can see the results that have come so far. Let's just compare the two defensemen, both at 5-on-5 here, and you can see Erik Gustafsson eclipsing Klingberg in expected goals for per 60, and you can also see the defensive play, with Gustafsson having 2.21 expected goals against per 60 rate, which is pretty great for an offensive D and pretty great for the Rangers. You can see the difference in expected goals against between Gustafsson and John Klingberg, and it is night and day. The Leafs could have just re-signed their guy, and it would have been a much better experiment. Now, obviously, moving teams, that could have played a part in Gustafsson's play, but I still think last year's Gustafsson was a better player than John Klingberg. And even when he was kind of mismanaged under Sheldon Keefe, Gustafsson still would have been the better option and would have been way cheaper too. You look at it, and the Leafs, of course, signing John Klingberg to a $4.1 million deal with trade protection. Instead, they could have signed Erik Gustafsson with no trade protection and an $825K cap hit. It really is that simple, folks. The Leafs goofed with this. And right now, man, the 6-5-2 Toronto Maple Leafs look in a weird spot defensively. John Klingberg has to go out. I'm glad that they're finally making the change because it's needed to happen. But the fact that now you have $4.1 million on the bench when in the press box, when you have such a problem with the cap like the Leafs do. The only positive is that it's only for 1 year, but of course with the no move clause, it's probably a lot harder to get rid of him. I say that as if the no move clause matters at all. With the way that Klingberg is playing, nobody will want him right now in a trade, that's for sure. But what do you guys think of the John Klingberg situation with the Toronto Maple Leafs? Do you think it will get better? Do you think he'll rebound? Or is this a disaster for the Leafs and their defense? Let us know all your thoughts down below. Of course, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for all the breakdowns throughout this NHL season, because you won't want to miss a bit of news. And of course, make sure you share the video with all the hockey fans, all the Leafs fans you guys know online, especially the Leafs fans, because it's looking pretty brutal out there for them. And of course, click on this card for all of my Trinity content right in one playlist. My name is Nathan, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.